Thank you. Once again, a very warm welcome to all of you, and thanks for staying through this seminar. Now, I guess this is not the first time ST Property has held such seminars, and each time I attend, I realize the crowd just simply gets larger. Right, so I want to thank and commend ST Property for their efforts towards educating the public as well as real estate agents and salespersons on the latest and the most current on the property market. So I want to welcome all my panelists. You know them, right? Welcome Nicholas, Eugene, Denka, right? Kelvin, and of course, Patrick. This is how we're going to ask questions, and I thought I should share with you the etiquette for asking questions. There are microphones placed at the central aisle. Please come up to these microphones, and the first thing you can do is not to tell us the PIN number of your bank account. Right. All you need to do is tell us your name and where you come from. If you are from an estate agent, please state your estate agent name and your name as well. Right. We will also be collecting your questions on paper, if you feel that you'd like to maintain some anonymity, and then we will try to answer those questions as well. Okay. So any takers? Let's begin with questions from the floor. Anyone? Thank you, sir. Would you like to... would you kindly go to the microphone, because the people behind may not be able to hear you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, thank you. Sorry to trouble you. You just make... The nearest microphone is here. If you...
Right, I'm Go from Propnex. I understand that there's going to be a presentation on the high-speed rail system and also its impact, right? Is this going to happen?
We're going to have a discussion on it. So are you asking a question on the high rail?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, great. So would you like to pose a question to any of the panelists, or you just like to hear from any one of them?
I want to hear, what can you offer? Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps we start with Nicholas. Nicholas, would you like to share some insights on the high-speed rail link between Singapore to KL, which the two premiers from Singapore and Malaysia had announced just shortly, and how this has an impact on the real estate market?
Okay. First and foremost, I think during tea time we had a discussion about, I heard some discussion about this, and just to clarify, there's actually going to be two terminals. I think there's going to be two rail systems. One is basically like a shuttle rail between Singapore and Johor. That one is likely to be located somewhere in Woodlands, right, near our existing causeway. So that one is actually maybe to lessen the traffic jam for people who have to commute between Singapore and Malaysia and Johor on a daily basis. The second one is going to be a high-speed rail system that basically connects Singapore and Kuala Lumpur. Now, that one is likely, 3 locations has been mentioned, 2 in the western region, that means either Jurong East, somewhere in Tuas, or somewhere in the city area. My guess is that its chances, since 2 out of 3, my chances is that it's going to be in the west. Why not in the city area? Although I think some people say city area is more convenient. Can you remember how long it takes for the Singapore government to basically take back Tanjong Pagar railway station and and the moment it's taken back, do you know how fast it was that they removed the rail? The rail was removed at super high speed. The rail that actually lasted for 100 years or more was removed very quickly so that it doesn't come back again, I think. And then that's it. Today you can walk along there, but no rail, it still got that mark. So I think at the city area, and city property, real estate in the city area is very, very expensive. If you want to have a train station, it's not just going to be a train station. It's going to have all the supporting amenities, all the infrastructure, including repair yards for the train, including facilities that actually allow the train to make U-turns or to change the engines of the train and so on. So this, to carve out a piece of land in the city area for all that purposes, I think is quite less chances lah. So it's somewhere in the west, right? If it is somewhere in the west, then there can be, in my mind, I can think there's two possible development models. One is that the government just simply built a railway station somewhere there with all the infrastructure amenities, and also public transport facilities to basically move the people to the train station quickly and move it out very quickly. After all, we're Singaporeans. Efficiency is in the government's bloodline, in the government's DNA. So that is one model. So they're not going to do a lot more. The second development model I can envision is that where they change the master plan in that selected area, they may change the zoning. If let's say it's in Tuas, many parts of Tuas is zone industrial B2. So they may have to, in future master plan, change the zoning in the area into more commercial space, maybe business park space, and maybe in the area around the terminal, some other types of mixed development space and so on. So it could actually make that place a bit more exciting, but there will definitely be some kind of MRT line to that area, quite likely. Think of it like the Changi Airport, where you got two lines, right? The green line go, and then after that it's divided at Tanah Merah around there. So same thing could happen here. We already got MRT line going all the way to Khoon. It could split up into this new industrial area, this new terminal. So that's a second development model.
Thank you, Nicholas. Eugene, you'd like to add further comments?
Okay. Right. So just following up on what Nicholas said, I also think that the city center kind of rail station is quite unlikely because land there is very expensive. And number two, we are actually spending a lot of time and effort now to clear the southern waterfront. Remember, in the master plan, they announced the southern waterfront, which is going to be a very beautiful place. They're going to clear up all the ports and all that by the time the lease expires in 2027. So I think it's quite unlikely that the rail station will be there, the high-speed rail. I think the major thing is the connection between Singapore and KL. They want to get this done possibly as quickly as possible, and the timeline given, actually they're looking at 2020 to be completed. We are already halfway into 2014. That gives us 5.5 years to go. And we haven't laid down the ground rules. We haven't settled anything yet. So if they're really realistically looking at a 2020 operational by 2020, then that does not give us much time. So if time is of the essence, then it's quite likely that it would be in my personal opinion, it's quite likely to be in Tuas West, which is a highly feasible place because there's a lot more vacant land, there's a lot more flexibility. Jurong East is another option, but Jurong East, if you go there today, is already very highly built up, right? And if you put a railway station there, is going to add more congestion into an already getting congested place. Don't forget, we have a major hospital, all right, in Jurong East. So it's quite likely it will be, in my personal opinion, likely to be in Tuas West. Having said that, there's also a Tuas West MRT line, all right, that is slated to be completed, I think, in the year 2016. All right, so that connection-wise, it makes sense to connect to the station at Tuas West. So that's my personal opinion.
Thank you, Eugene. There's been considered opinion, or rather it has been an opinion circulating in the market that once this high-speed rail link, for example, is constructed, it will not only facilitate transportation from Singapore to KL beneath 3 hours, but it will also mean that there is an impact on the real estate along that line. Now, to what extent, gentlemen, do you think that this holds water, or this is true?
So, actually,
It's on, yeah.
Hello. Yeah. In my opinion, the properties that will benefit will actually more be along at the station or near the stations, right? So of course at the Singapore end, it will be Singapore. And then for that whole stretch that goes from Singapore to Kuala Lumpur, I'm not sure how many stations are there. If the property is located, if let's say there are certain stations where the train can stop to take on passengers or to let passengers alight, I think real estate around that station will probably benefit in terms of appreciation and value. But I think along the line, that means where there's no stop, the train just zoom right past. I don't think there's any appreciation in the value. In fact, I wouldn't want to live near that because it is noisy. If you have ever lived near a railway station or even near our existing MRT line that's above surface, you notice how noisy it is when the train goes past. Dusty, not to mention dangerous. At times, if people were to wander or whatever, wander accidentally onto the tracks. So it's near the station and not along the line.
Thank you, thank you. Any other wisdom from the rest of the panelists before we move on? Denka, hi.
Okay, maybe I just say something different from all of them. I'm fortunate enough I get to travel. I've been to Japan, Europe. I always notice one thing. Their economy always boom after high-speed rail is available. And why do our government need to do above ground? Why cannot they do below ground? Meaning, we can still have a city center terminal, but it's just below ground. I mean, the main tracks can be above ground, but when you reach the city center, like what they have in Tokyo or in Europe, everything is below ground. Then it will not affect the construction, it will not affect the infrastructure, but then again, it will make things more convenient for everyone. I mean, if we look at the Japan economy in the 60s and 70s, they only boom after their railway tracks has been completed because circulation of population, tourists went up, trade and industry went up, etc., etc. The same. After World War II, the England and France economy was very bad. When they built the English Channel, even though it's underground, a few hundred kilometers under sea level, they still managed to do it. And after that, the economy boomed. I mean, for Singapore standard, our Singapore government, will put it bluntly, have the money. And if they want to do something, they have to do it something right. And I think below ground will be the option because we do not have much land to do it above ground. And why stop at KL? I mean, Singapore to KL is only 300 kilometers, am I right? Why not go all the way to Bangkok, Yangon, or Cambodia, where all the population are also booming, where they can actually come to Singapore for tourism, come to Singapore to stay at our hotel, and vice versa, we can go there and invest. It should not be stopping only at KL. The railway tracks around the world, you see the Japan JR line, is few thousand kilometers long. If we were to build something from Singapore equivalent to the JR line in Japan, I think we can reach all the way to Hong Kong. Do not stop. I think we urge the Singapore government, do not stop at Malaysia. Look beyond that to help Singaporeans have more income from other means. Thanks.
Thank you, Denka. That's dreaming real big across many territories.
Maybe, Mr. Tan, I just put it this way. If other countries can do it 20, 30 years ago, I'm sure Singapore can do a better job now. Am I right?
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Denka. We take the second question. I have one here already. Is the cooling measures temporary or permanently for the property market? I'm not sure any one of us will be able to prophesy that, but you want to give it a go?
This is a very sensitive question to ask. Okay, if you say it's permanent, it's also no good. If you say it's temporary, I also don't know how temporary. All right, but I think, let's put it this way, I think the measures, the spirit of it is to align the rate of price increase, all right, in the market. It is not to bring down property prices. That's one. Secondly, it's also a containment measure in the sense that some of us are becoming overly geared. So that's why they have this TDSR ratio that's been put in place. Of course, to us property agents, we suffer, right? So is it temporary? Is it permanent? Actually, nobody has the answer. But the thing is that we have asked this many times, and I think indirectly the government has hinted that it will stay for now. Okay, so as to when they are removing it, actually everybody's guess is, all right, nobody knows exactly. All right, so it's very hard for me to put it in something. But I would say for the time being, while overall volume has fallen, all right, like to take take a line from what Kelvin has said. Don't let all these negative thoughts influence you. Go where the action is. So where the action is where transactions are moving. So you have to look at the market in perspective. In today's market, yes, okay, there are people who are affected, but there is also transaction volume in the market. And the bulk of the transaction volume, right, if you analyze the data, it is moving in, majority of transactions today will be in the 800K to 1.2 million or up to 1.6 million. This will be the price range that's moving actually. So if you want to have more probability of closing a deal today, just focus on this price range, right? The rest, you just let it be, unless you want to camp in a territory that's not moving today. So go where the wind blows, adjust your sail accordingly, all right? I think today the market data is very much available by using the tools that we have in the market, by looking at statistics and all that. You can pretty much tell where the action is and focus on where the action is. The other thing is, while resale is slow, what's moving today is projects, right? Projects that are priced attractively, projects that have been repriced from a higher price to a more attractive price. They are moving. It's a proven formula. So any project that's coming on the market today that's repriced, all right, sure, move on. All right, so it's where to focus your energy and effort on, right? Rather than let the negative thoughts influence what you should do.
Thank you, Eugene, for reminding us that the cooling measures are here for a sustainable property market, and that as salespersons, we should look out for where the market trends are in terms of sales, where the districts, where sales are taking place. Any further, Kelvin? Yeah.
I think most important, I think most important for real estate agent wise, right, it's not about whether the market is whatever. No matter what, the market is already fixed in this manner. You do not need to worry about whether TDS or ABSD. Because why? The most important is how are we going to move forward? What is the kind of things that we can talk to the customer? What are the things still available? There's still a lot of things can be done. The only thing is that probably you are not doing the right thing, that's all, right? We still have a lot of opportunities. To those investors here or to those homeowners here, I think whether is it the market here, there's no need to wait, really. That to me, it's not because I'm a real estate agent, no. Because I always feel that there's always good properties to look into. You just need to understand how to analyze whether the property is it worth or not. Especially in Singapore, all the information are so transparent. You just need to find the right person to advise you. You probably can get into something. Just like homeowners here who only owns a property, there's so much opportunity that you can use your money to work hard for you. I feel more like how you can use your money to work hard. Rather, I've bothered about the measures. To me, these are all nothing that we cannot control one. No need to bother, no need to think. Let's focus on how we can actually do well in a business, or let's focus on what are the things that we can focus to share with the consumer, how they can actually use their money to work hard for them. I think that is the most important focus that I feel that all agents should be looking into. All right, thank you.
Kelvin, while you're still having the microphone, there is a question for you. This could be from your fan club. How do you convince the seller to lower their selling price?
Oh, actually, okay, if you ask me today, if you want to ask your seller to lower the price, you must ask yourself this question: why the seller need to sell? Is there a reason for him to sell? If there's no reason, that's the reason why he's asking so high a price. Same thing, I also have a unit, right? The agent offered me a very good price. I wouldn't want to sell. He said, you should sell already because the price has gone up so much. You should be selling. The price is coming down. The more you tell me, the more I don't want to sell, right? The only thing is that why homeowners should be selling, unless you have shared with the customer how they can actually use their money to work hard for them. You see, very simple. I told you about the 5th floor, go to 6th floor. The homeowners also tells me, Kelvin, if I sell at 1,200, I buy back at 1,200, does it make sense or not? Right, they also ask me this question. I say very simple. If you can take out your money and if you can actually look onto 2 properties, which currently he has really gotten 2 properties, which means that if the price really goes up, he will have more returns subsequent years, right? So that's why in order to convince your clients to lower down the price, first look at what they can do with the money. If they know that if they can use their money to work hard for them, I tell you they will sell at the right price. If they do not know what the money they are using it for, I can tell you they will wait for the price to come, which you will find it so difficult to sell because the price will not go down. Very simple. So I think most important, speak to your client, understand why they should be selling. Work with them, how you can structure their portfolio better. I think that will help you. All right, thanks.
Yeah. Patrick has a comment.
Actually, just one small point on these cooling measures. Because given these measures, right, I've been seeing a lot of clients, and also during one of the courses that I conduct on the different ways of transferring ownership, I see a lot of clients coming to me for advice on how to decouple, right? On how to actually take out the names by way of gift, trust, and basically is to mitigate or to avoid cooling measures. Not illegal, but legal ways to do it. And we have to do some calculations so that, so this is something for you to consider. Yeah.
Just give me a moment. Just one thing I wanted to add. I think some people in the market feels that I'm a bit of a pessimist, especially when they read what I say in the newspapers. Actually, the thing is that sometimes I can say 10 things to reporters. I know that some of you are here. Some of you here are reporters. I may say 8 positive things, 2 not so positive, and I get quoted on that too. Now, why I mention this is that I'm optimistic. I think the cooling measures will be removed one day. The only thing that I'm a bit worried about, and when I read it the first time, when Mr. Taman said that the TDSR is permanent, and a chill ran down my spine. Because in the past, when the government introduced cooling measures, they never said that it is permanent. So I'm hopeful, I'm fairly confident it will be removed one day. And chances, but the TDSR, what was the market running on in the last 4 years, the boom? One of them is actually low interest rate. The other one is a lot of liquidity. Liquidity is partly fueled by credit. And when the government introduced TDSR, they were cutting off the credit. So that actually knocked the wind out of the sail of the property market. And when the minister said that the TDSR is permanent, it is quite worrisome. So I actually hope that, I think REITs may be doing it. I hope that some professional bodies can give feedback to the government to hope that, to make them change their mind, to make TDSR one day be removed. Because if it is permanent, it will be almost a permanent millstone around the necks of the property market.
Okay, thank you. We'll ask our gentleman there who's been waiting patiently.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm Chan. I'm not an agent. First of all, I'd like to thank the speakers today for insightful sharing. We all read that the impending oversupply in the pipeline, and would like to seek the panel's view on what's the impact this has on the PPI.
Impending oversupply and how this has an impact on the property price index.
Okay, the strong supply, actually supply, there can be 2 types. I think the supply you are mentioning about are those that are under construction now and expected to be completed in the next 3 years or 4 years. And I think the numbers can range, depending on how you look, on which year, it can be about 70 over 1,000 to 80 over 1,000 units to be completed within the next 3.5 years. The difficult thing about trying to forecast what is the impact on prices is that we can't tell how much of it is actually owner-occupied and how much of it is for investment. If it is owner-occupied, I don't think the impact, if majority of it is owner-occupied, I think the impact on prices will not be that significant. Because it doesn't matter whether the price go up or down, you're still staying in that property, right? The worrisome part is actually if a significant portion or part of certain parts of Singapore where a large number of it are actually bought for investment and they have difficulty renting it out. And actually, but that may still not be a problem if interest rate still remains low and the owners can still continue to service the loan. It's just that maybe rental is lower, so they basically have to come up with more of their own money to pay for the mortgage. I think the worst is if there is a perfect storm, where there is an economic slowdown, interest rate increase, and less rental demand. Then that is where it will impact on prices because some of the owners may not be able to hold, they have to sell, and when you have more sellers than buyers, that can cause a downwards pressure on prices. So it's not just the supply, it's what will be our economic condition in the next 3 years.
Well, Patrick, this one goes to you. I think the enquirer is probably inspired by your story. Yeah, your first premises in People's Park. Yeah. So this is probably a salesperson. He or she asks, how can a salesperson find out if the property to be let out is subject to the bank's restriction due to default by mortgagor?
Actually, the most basic search is from the title search. You can see whether the property is under mortgage. So depending whether you are representing the tenant or the landlord. Actually, in either case, you can actually do a search. So if you are the tenant's agent, then you would want to ask from the landlord's agent for a written confirmation from the bank, from the mortgagee, that they have permission to let out. So actually there's such a thing, but it is not commonly done. So depending on whether your tenant is savvy and all this, they may actually ask you to ask for a copy of this, especially when the search reveals that actually this property is under mortgage. And if you are the landlord's agent, then it also will do you some good in asking whether this property, whether the landlord has obtained permission. Because in all standard mortgage, right, it is a standard clause that you cannot lease out without the express permission of the bank. Yeah, so these are some things that you can do.
I just add on to what Patrick has said. It's actually a requirement of the Act, the Land Titles Act and the Land Title Strata Act, that any property that is mortgaged to the bank, then you actually have to get the bank's approval, right? Or inform the bank that you are going to rent it out. Otherwise, like what Patrick did during his presentation, in times where property is being repossessed by a bank, the tenancy will be not recognized, and that will end up in a lot of trouble. So yes, he's right. Just by looking at the property title search, the $16 search that we do from InList, you can actually see that once there's a mortgagee bank there, then it is safe to assume that the bank's permission is required before the property can be rented out.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. I just like to add on what the previous gentleman had asked about supply and demand. I think it all depends on the people sitting in this room and our government. We be very frank. Singapore population now is at 5 million. Developers want to continue to build in Singapore. If not, they'll build elsewhere. Am I right? They either build in Singapore or they build elsewhere. If they continue to build elsewhere, the money will be out of Singapore. And in order for the developers to continue to build good projects in Singapore, there must be a demand. At the present moment, supply is up because foreigners is being cut away. Expatriate is being cut away. Our population is not growing fast enough. I think there's only two choices that we can do. One is Singaporeans have more kids. If not, we allow more foreigners to be in. If not, we will face what Japan will face, economic recession for the next 20 years. And when that happens, I think it's beyond our control already. Thanks.
Thanks, Denka. We are back to Patrick. You mentioned earlier on about offer to purchase and option to purchase. And somewhere in your presentation, you mentioned that an offer to purchase or you imply that it's not legal, it may not be legally binding until an option to purchase is being issued. Would you like to clarify?
No, it's not. Offer to purchase a contract as well. Option to purchase is also a contract. Offer to purchase comes from the buyer. Option to purchase issued from the seller. Nowadays, it has become quite common for buyer to issue offer to purchase, like for those reasons that I've mentioned. I myself included, always give blank check, to the agent. Sometimes I just give check without seeing the option. Because when the market is good, right, we just give the check, but never really had sight of the option. But nowadays, buyers are a bit more careful. We say that when we give our check, 1%, we want to make sure that actually the seller is serious in selling to me. Right, no point collecting my check and then start to tell other people that, I have checked, can you up the offer? So what I will do as a buyer is that when I give my 1%, I also accompany with an offer to purchase coming from me, properly signed, giving a deadline to the seller that within this 1 week or 3 days or 5 days, I want to see the option. And this offer, if accepted by the seller, is a binding contract. Right? So the seller is obliged to give me the option within that period of time. Right? So both are contracts.
Thank you for the clarification. Gentleman there? Yep.
Hi, Marcus from Martins. Okay, we have seen a lot of signs now in Singapore itself, a lot of key growth area, high growth area on commercial and industrial. But the fact that the SMEs and all are having manpower issues, the fact that there are a lot of overhead costs and rising costs, how do we see the coming 5 years, 10 years that in the view of increased industrial and commercial upcoming, how can they technically sustain? Of course, I have my own opinion on what's going to happen, but how can we view this as objectively that it will be able to sustain the businesses or the new businesses that is going to welcome to Singapore, knowing that a lot of SMEs are reducing their scale and going abroad in expansion. So it's more on the commercial industrial upcoming market itself. Yeah.
I think the government here, especially MTI, has an ideal vision for Singapore's industrial sector or industries is that we have very high-end jobs, high-end, high specs, high-tech jobs, where the productivity is very high of every worker, so that the workers, you have a lot of, it's based heavily on capital or machineries, and then all the low-skilled workers, you have minimum need for low-skilled workers, and so you don't need to have this huge army of foreign workers housed in dormitories somewhere in Tuas or somewhere in Jurong. And we can become like Switzerland. We can become like Switzerland, where every Singaporeans or every citizens will have high-paid jobs. But Switzerland is in the center of Europe, while Singapore is in Asia, where we are surrounded by many countries that actually have a huge amount of low-skilled laborers that are willing to sell their labors for people who are willing to sell their labors for. In Singapore, the salary they get is a few times more than what they can get at home. So it's getting quite difficult because for the companies, if they can't get the workers in Singapore, yes, sometimes they'll go overseas. So here we have one is the Singapore government's vision. So that is one reason why they are not changing, like for example, their allowable trades in B1 and B2 factories, and are very strict about commercial entities moving into industrial space. And on the other hand is where companies are quite used to having access to cheap labors. Basically the government wants it their way, and sometimes they come up with very punitive measures, like for example, very high foreign workers levy to force the company to do certain things that the government wants. Your questions about whether, how would it be sustainable, I don't have the answer. If I do, I should be running for PAP, and then try to get into as a minister and earn that kind of salary. Then I don't have
we're
the
getting
answer.
off. We're getting off already.
Oh, okay. I don't have the straightforward answers to it because the government has been trying, and then they are still not reaching there yet. But there have been calls in the industry, in the property industry, that perhaps the government should revise some of the rules and regulation governing industrial space to allow a new kind of industrial space. Like for example, industrial office. That means you allow light and clean industries in a certain industrial space, and also some commercial users to widen the allowable use of B1 space, to allow more trades. Because nowadays, like for example, if you were to do a certain trade, take for example, printing, okay? The printing trade actually, sadly, is a bit of a sunset industry. But nowadays, you don't need a huge machinery to do printing of name cards or greeting cards or anything. You can actually do it with smaller and smaller printer. So there are industries, the industry is changing. Unfortunately, the government's rules regarding use of industrial space is not changing as fast.
Any further comments from the panelists? If not, we're going to take 2 more questions because time is catching up on us. Let's go to Kelvin. You know, in this very tough market, salespersons have often thought whether they should cut their advertising budget because nobody's calling them on their ads. And if they do so, what do you think will be the repercussions? Is this advisable? Would that diminish their visibility in the market?
I think for those people who are actually very focused, that's the reason why I feel that those agents who really want to do well in this business, you need to be very focused in a particular GTA that you are actually looking into. Why? Because the cost of your expenses is already fixed. That's why I always tell people, agents, right, let's have a business mindset, not an agent mindset. A business mindset will actually formulate in such a way that, you see, in the past, I also throw flyers. I also have been through the market up and down as well. I also done where the market is SARS period as well. So how do we manage to still do well in the business? The reason why we do well in this business is because we tell ourselves, if people don't do, we better do. If people don't throw the flyers, we better throw flyers. We have our chances is higher. It's the same thing. But when you are focused, you don't bother because your expenses is fixed. But the most, of course, now with the new technology, with internet, with portals, you actually will cut down a lot as compared to the past. In the past, we only spend on advertisement. But now it depends on the area that you are focusing on. For example, if you are focusing in Punggol area or the kind of younger generation one, most of them wouldn't read classified. Most of them will go internet. But if you look at those high-end properties, then you have to use paper because why? Most of them are still relying on paper. But if you talk about internet, these people would not bother to look at a property guru. They have to search one by one. They would just look at the paper. So it depends on the market that you are doing now. It depends on your position. Where are you now? If you are doing commercial shop houses, property guru or all this portal may not be so strong because they will still look at the papers to look for the kind of properties that they want. So really depends on where you are. If you have a concern, set yourself a budget and fix the budget aside and don't think so much. I always believe if you don't do, people will do. If people don't do and you do it, you will make a difference. That's how I feel. Yeah.
Thank you, Kelvin. Yeah. I go on to another question that I have here. It's about mixed developments. I think the gentleman is asking, what's the fate of mixed developments? Are mixed developments going to be the popular dish of the day into the future? Is there a premium that people will pay for it to live near a mixed development or in a mixed development? Nicholas?
Yes, I think mixed developments will still be very popular, especially if they are within a 5 minutes walk to an MRT station. It's almost like a no-brainer for developers or for investors. You buy, there was a time actually it wasn't very popular, about 10 over years ago. Not that popular, but now it is all the favor. And I think as agents or as a developer or as a buyer, buying into mixed development seems to be the in thing. But there's one thing, I think in time to come, when many of the mixed development that were marketed in the last 3 years get TOP, you will start seeing there will be different performance of certain mixed developments. Those mixed developments where the commercial space is under one owner, where it is managed by one owner, and where they are able to control the tenant mix, the trade mix, and able to put in, like for example, things that the residents in that area, not just the development, the area needs, like a supermarket, proper management of the car parks and other things. You'll find that such developments actually will attract more users, more tenants, and the values will preserve better than other developments which is too strata titled that actually has no control. And worse, if it's strata titled and it's near an MRT station, it can still be safe. But if it is not near an MRT station and it's really strata titled, and the worst thing is that the shops are divided into very, very small units, where after it is TOP'd, it could face challenges.
Thank you. Anyone to add to that? Denka?
I think mixed development is not something new. Maybe I just clarify this. When I was young, 30 years ago, I stayed in Bedok South. It's a HDB flat.
You still look young.
Oh, thank you. But you look younger. Okay. Anyway, I stay in Bedok South, which is very near Bedok Central. It's a HDB flat. Above the HDB flats are, the low-rise HDB flat. Below are already all the HDB commercial shops already. So 30, 40 years ago, our government already have mixed development for HDB. It's just that the private sectors are slowly catching up. So, and that time I remember, I realized it's so convenient. You just go down, your coffee shop is there, your banks are there, whatever you want to buy is already there. I think Singaporeans, we need conveniency. So mixed development is, I won't say it's the future, but it's already been there, just that it's more popularized these days. That's all.
Thank you, Denka, for the remark. Later, I'll buy you dinner. Parting shots, panelists, to our audience here today. In one line, what would you say to our audience today as a takeaway? Kelvin?
I think for the real estate agents, let's be very positive, let's stay very focused, let's be more energetic. I think you will win the race.
I think the market is the market. As long as everybody here is willing to work hard, you will still survive.
Focus where the action is. Action is today is 60% of the transaction is 800K to 1.6 mil. 20% of the transaction is up to 800K. The rest, you take your chances, right?
Well, I think everybody knows that there is the market move in cycles. So I believe there is a time to buy, okay, and there's a time to sell. So if you are only focusing only on the buy side, always asking people to buy, it will be a bit tougher going this year and probably next year. So perhaps one way is think out of the box, see if you can serve the sellers. Okay, but that is, I guess, easier said than done. So you need to think positively and see how you can put that, perhaps attends his courses, and see how you can put that into action.
I think in this market, equip yourself with more knowledge. Whether it's attend, whatever causes, as long as you can arm yourself with more knowledge, it will set you apart from the rest.
And for me, sign up for the next ST Property Seminar.